Welcome, everybody, to episode 6 of the Blockchain Babe podcast. Today, I'm with Sean from XNET, as well as Russ and Joe. And today, we're going to be talking about the first blockchain-powered mobile carrier. How are you today, Sean?
What's up, Chris? Glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
I want to get into talking about XNET, but first, I want to know a little bit more about you and what your introduction to crypto was like. I always think it's interesting to hear from everybody how they found it and what led them to become part of a crypto project. So
Yeah, no, for sure. I'll definitely have to say my deep introduction to crypto was probably 2019, late 2019, 2020. And it actually ironically started with what was then known as decentralized wireless, but now broadly known as DePIN, which stands for Decentralized Physical Infrastructure Networks. But it was basically my senior year in college, 2020 bull run. Some buddies of mine had discovered Helium, which was an IoT network then, through an Instagram ad actually. So my junior and senior year of college was just entirely spent diving deep into these networks, mining, setting them up, learning more about it, connecting with people in the space. And that was honestly my hard intro to crypto. And it's interesting because I think most people get introduced obviously through Bitcoin and Ethereum, but I guess I kind of had this niche entry through this new kind of vertical emerging in crypto. So that's kind of how I got involved. And since then, went from more of a passive participant, just mining, to doing more active stuff. From there, I also part-time helped out with the Helium Foundation on the grant side. I worked at a startup accelerator, and there it was quite interesting because I got to see a lot of other types of blockchain projects and try to help them launch, do a lot of get to market stuff with them, help with tokenomics. And then through there, I guess my focus has mainly been on the mobile side. So this thing we call decentralized wireless now, and my focus has been on mobile always. And somehow through the great web of just connectivity and knowing people, I'm good friends with the guys at Escape Velocity. They're a venture firm who their main thesis is decentralized wireless and DePIN. And they kind of led me on to XNET. They're like, hey, there's this new exciting project coming in the CBRS mobile space, leveraging blockchain. And they gave me an introduction there, and just really passionate about materializing the space finally and just disrupting the entire kind of incumbent that we know as telecom, the oligopolies as we know them. So yeah, it's my passion. Just want to make a bigger impact. When I think about decentralization, it's not this completely permissionless, trustless, cult-like society, but if we can abstract away some power from where it's held today and distribute it amongst communities, I think we can make a long-lasting impact and do something useful for the community. So yeah, that's kind of my background.
I thought it was interesting you said you pretty much found your way in with Helium, because that definitely brought a bunch of people into the space, and I think specifically into the DePIN space, because it's kind of its own niche product, different than traditional crypto, and it brought a different crowd into it. So did you have a bunch of hotspots hosted, or what were you doing with that?
Yeah, so it was basically hosting hotspots, finding locations in our college town, and it was actually pretty cool. I think it works differently in a college town. Some interesting dynamics there because being a student, I don't know, you have people just hustling. They'd be happy to get 100 more bucks, but in the real world, it's like, oh, you're only paying me $100 a month, and you have to come in my house and install this thing. So it was interesting. It's like the college grounds are kind of a nice ecosystem test bed for these things because it's easy to find hosts. There's no barrier, students are more prone to accept these things. So yeah, I was mostly hosting things, and meeting people. That was kind of the biggest thing out of this. You go to host, you meet someone new, you have a new friendship. Some of my best friends I actually made through just like these mining DY networks. So it's been pretty awesome.
Yeah, I wish I did that when I was at my previous school. I probably could have placed some hotspots some places, but I ended up doing like I think I had two in my house, and it wasn't the best setup. Let's talk about some XNet some more. So, what is your role?
So at XNET, I guess my role on paper, I like to say I lead business development and kind of partnerships within the crypto sphere and the deepen sphere currently. But man, it's a startup. So, I mean, you guys know how it is, just running around everywhere, doing what I can, each day. Basically, my goal is each day that I can get someone excited about XNet, I've done my job. And if I haven't done that, then I failed at my job for that day. So that's what I like to tell people.
Awesome. So I did make a video talking about XNet. I believe Joe did as well. But for those watching or listening, how would you explain XNet so that anybody could understand?
For sure. No, and really appreciate you doing that video, Chris and Joe. I think it was well received. A lot of my team members saw it and they loved it. So very glad you did those videos. I think it was helpful for a lot of people. But yeah, XNet's general mission is basically, I guess the first principle is sharing things makes things more efficient and makes things more accessible and equitable for the world, right? So the current state of mobile connectivity is one of has been pretty drowned in stuff like regulatory capture, um, just the oligopoly structure that the US has when it comes to mobile connectivity, right? There's three or four main participants. How it works is each of those participants participate in a top-down structured spectrum auction every few years, and this is like trillions of dollars. They're spending billions of dollars. Actually, the U.S. government's net revenue, like 2 to 3%, comes from these big oligopolies: AT&T, Verizon, T-Mobile. But yeah, and due to this regulatory capture, there are only being 3 or 4 companies that kind of dictate what happens in the industry of mobile in the United States. It leads to a lot of inefficiencies and a lot of things that could be better, such as pockets of connectivity that aren't there. Like a lot of rural places don't have connectivity because these companies aren't incentivized to do it because they're not going to make a good buck there. Or say expanding networks, a dense place like New York, obviously just with compute going up, the need and demand for data is kind of just like a left curve going up at this point. Like people have predicted that by 2028, the use of just the amount of gigabytes that flow through the mobile ecosystem in America will maybe 3 to 5x. So the current structures aren't well equipped to keep up with what's going on in the mobile sphere. And XNet is kind of a testament to that. We want to fix the inefficiencies of the Verizons, the T-Mobiles, the AT&Ts, and basically create a shared economy of these cellular networks. So XNet, we're basically using blockchain and crypto incentives to bootstrap cellular networks in places where they're most needed, where the demand is the most. So areas that have poor connectivity right now, or they have capacity issues. And we basically incentivize and decentralize our radios through our community and a token into these areas. And the plan is to basically resell our network back to the big guys, back to the oligopoly at a fraction of the cost, and share that revenue with the people that help us along the way, set it up, and that are just part of our community, because that's how we believe it should work. And another big thing with 5G coming, the current industry is just not equipped to be able to handle the hardware demand and the intensifying of locations throughout the US. So right now, I think 4G towers are placed every couple blocks or couple miles apart due to frequency measurements and such. And with 5G, we're going to need basically radios on every block, radios on every telephone pole, and the industry is just not well equipped to do that. And I think this is obviously a better method, right, just decentralizing the hardware, the radios that you need to do it, and yeah, go from there. So pretty excited. I know that was a lot. Pretty proud
No,
of
I
could have
appreciate
condensed it.
that. No, that's great. I thought it was interesting that you're talking about how these big telecom companies and how they're not well equipped. And I remember since I was a kid, pretty much for the past 10, maybe 15 years, when you walk into one of the stores like AT&T, Verizon, they usually have a map of the United States and it shows their coverage. And that map really hasn't changed over the years. And there's a lot of dead spots across the United States that people live in, and they are going to be occupied as the population grows. And they just don't seem like they are really putting a lot of money into upgrading. It seems more like they're putting their money into just kind of maintaining the network.
Yeah.
Right now, where I live, the service is awful. I have one bar on my phone, but it really isn't one bar. And I think it's because of the amount of devices that are connected to the one tower in the area, because I'm on a college campus right now. So the need for a network that can handle all of this bandwidth is necessary, and it really doesn't seem like any of them are prepared. I want to pivot here and talk about your potential competitors like Helium and Pollen. Can you talk about your ability to be a full mobile network service and what that means?
Yeah, for sure, Chris. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of kind of competitive advantages and maybe even disadvantages of kind of launching when XNet did into this environment. But yeah, XNet, we're basically in mobile terms and technical terms, we're building a true 3GPP GSMA compliant neutral host network. And this idea that I brought up earlier, that sharing things no matter what makes it more efficient, right? Sharing resources, sharing capital makes things more efficient. And that's what basically the neutral host enables. So basically what this neutral host is, the XNet network is able to, because it's GSMA and 3GPP compliant, I think that might be the main competitive advantage between networks such as Helium and Pollen. We're able to interconnect with any telco. So it could be Verizon, AT&T, T-Mobile, Dish, any telco's backend, which is their mobile core, and they'll be able to roam onto our network. So Chris, like you said, that example in your college campus where you have a bar, say we incentivize maybe a group of your friends to go deploy XNet gear, and we have a deal with T-Mobile or say Verizon. And if you have one of those carriers, the beauty of this, the neutral host model, is that T-Mobile or Verizon will roam onto the XNet network, and you won't even know that you're technically using the XNet network. Well, you might because you set it up, but basically that one bar you had in that spot near your campus you'll be fully connected. You'll have 4 bars, full connectivity. That's kind of the beauty of the XNet model. No other company has done it so far, and I think this is due to a lack of expertise in telecom and just knowing how this industry works. Obviously, I kind of mentioned it was an oligopoly structure, and I think that has a lot to do with it. Like, there's a lot of back roads. You have to know certain people within the space. You have to have these standards that are just been there since the 80s, and companies like Helium and Pollen are great. I kind of got the introduction to the space, and they kind of laid out the ground set and the vision that the space could be in terms of how we could scale it. But I think that was an area where they lacked, where XNet picked up the slack. They're like, all right, we need to make this not a joke really anymore, because these operators, they're like, oh yeah, there's some cool crypto telecom company, but they don't really know what they're doing. But now I think XNet changes that narrative. We walk into rooms and we're a GSMA 3GPP compliant network. We're building our network in clustered footprint and like actually building a real product when it comes to the network. So I think that's our main competitive advantage, and people get that. There's a lot of pull from customers in the market, such as MNOs, and they get what we're doing and they're excited to participate. So I think that's the real advantage, and that's kind of how we set ourselves apart.
How would someone be able to participate in XNet today?
Yeah, Russ, would you like to jump in on that?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm happy to jump in here and talk about how dreamers like me got involved in this space. Uh, so I can jump into a little background for some context. So I worked in the traditional telecom industry at Verizon Wireless. I was a principal engineer and built out thousands of cell sites, mostly in the Midwest. But later on, I was deploying equipment worldwide. and had a bunch of junior engineers in the team that I worked with to make sure we could get equipment up and running. People's cell phones would turn on, and they get as many bars as possible. And then later on, worked at U.S. Cellular, focused on securing the wireless network from attacks. So I left the industry twice, the traditional telecom industry, mostly because I was just kind of frustrated with where the industry was going. So mentioned earlier the big carriers. So I'm lucky enough to have been in meetings with some pretty big executives at Verizon, talking about what they really think, how they really view the market, what we were spending, what our priorities were, where we were building out capacity. And it was very tightly controlled, and over time the focus changed quite a bit from making sure we always had the best quality, fewest drop calls. Calls were always if you got your phone, it was reliable, it worked. And later on it came more of data and data speeds, and what is good enough. And I felt like we were kind of dropping our focus a little bit, and it was tightly controlled here. Like if somebody complains, it goes into, and it's like this with all the carriers, it goes in and that complaint goes through systems of prioritization, and what can come out the other end typically is typically not what going to help somebody who's saying I've got poor coverage in this area. They usually have some sense of it, but prioritize areas for lots of internal reasons. And if you just say, hey, it's okay, I just want to put one up maybe in my house or in my campus or in my building, it's a very long, slow, and expensive process to do that. And you got to do it with each carrier, independently, unless you're doing, what they call neutral hosting, like maybe for a stadium. But typically a very long, very slow, very complicated process. And so I was very excited. Similar to Sean here, when I first heard about helium, I didn't believe it. I thought it was kind of ridiculous. And then as I saw it grow, took it more seriously, built my own fleet, signed up hosts, etc. And I still have that fleet today. And really got involved and started doing interviews with the community, started talking to people, being one of the few people with a background in the traditional industry, and hoping that it would get better. It'd be more open to where, as long as you follow the set of rules that are out there, FCC rules, and some fair rules from the carriers, you can fix the problem of having bad service, and also get paid for it. I think was really revolutionary. A lot of other networks that are in the space have shied away from this and are kind of scared of this. XNET, I think, is the clear leader in the United States of this concept and pushing us forward. It's probably one of the toughest things to do. This is a huge wall to climb. Other networks have given up, have stopped saying they're trying to do this, or they put it on the back burner. So it's really brave of them, I think, to stick up, and also the technical quality of the people on the team that Sean didn't get into. People like Tom, who have an incredible wealth of experience, incredibly smart, poignant, and incredibly connected in the traditional industry, know all the big players, know what they're looking for, know how to do technical integrations. Have worked on mobile cores before, have actually production-ready commercial cores that are ready to go, ready to integrate, can easily pass an audit, and make roaming so much better and so much easier. So customers have a seamless experience, I think, is a true strength of it. So what I do now is I really work to help expand XNET. Right now, I'm really focused on Chicago and building out that area with ISPs. So I really try to help explain to normal people, normal businesses, what's in it for them, why this makes sense, give them commitments, and then help them, basically I unlock this new opportunity for them and supply the equipment for it, partner with them to put these up. So, which is a difficult thing, getting good locations, having solid business relationships, making promises and commitments and delivering on them is, can be very tough in this space, because timelines change, networks change, incentives change very frequently. I mean, another network here is constantly changing. It's very hard to forecast what you're going to make, even next month. So stability is key, trust is key, and that's why I enjoy working with the XNET team. They're a team that's easy to talk to. They're very knowledgeable, very smart, but they're also good people to work with. There's definitely some bad people in the space who are very difficult to work with, and think they own the space. And I don't think that's true at all. We don't know, exactly how this is going to turn out. But I think it's going to change very quickly. Eventually, the wall will fall. And I think XNet's going to be one of the first to say, look, we did it. Maybe it took a little bit longer than expected, but we were able to work with them and unlock this tremendous opportunity. And, the big opportunity that we see, I think, in the near term future is really working with wireless, working with Wi-Fi, and saying, you can get paid for Wi-Fi roaming is very exciting. And that's very easy to do. There's several companies that do this today. So that's a bit of my background, bit of what I do. I'm fairly open here. I don't post on Twitter that much. I'm not, as much of a YouTuber, I think, as probably everybody else here. But I'm very active and have tried to meet with people in person. So I was at Mobile World Congress earlier this year, talking with many of the manufacturers and projects in the space, which was very exciting, very enlightening, and really gave me a lot of hope for the future, especially on a day like today where, the market's pretty far down and you're seeing a lot of people capitulate. I'm seeing more pictures of helium miners in garbage cans I've ever seen before. So it's definitely changing.
Russ, can you elaborate a little bit on your like the crowd shared hosting model? If people want to be involved, how they could approach you if they have a great location or they have hardware that they need to get out to a location?
Yeah. So that's something. Thanks for bringing that up, Joe. So a couple of things. So I work with mostly buy sells radios. That's what I focus on. And if somebody has extra radios, I can take those radios and basically unlock them to work on any network that's out there. So XNet makes a lot of sense in XNet areas, especially special areas where they have incentives with hexes. And that's where I help. So there are multiple opportunities across the country, evolving every day, every week of where to deploy. Chicago is a big one. There's several places in the Midwest. They're looking for radios and for partners. So even within the space, that's what I do. I'm just trying to help move the space forward by making commitments, using these radios to as much as possible and unlocking them so that we can get the most value out of them. And I think XNet's also something that XNet did that other projects have not done is they've made a commitment to open radios. So they don't try to lock them down or say nobody else can use them or force their manufacturers to sign, onerous agreements like other projects do where they're not supposed to let the radio be used with anybody else. They're very open and competitive, which is, I think, a sign of confidence in what they're offering.
Sean, one of the things I wanted to ask you about was we're looking at carrier roaming. So carriers, customers offloading their data to these CBRS radios. Now, is there some sort of quality assurance model you guys follow that would bring confidence in this type of operation?
Yeah. So a big part of it is don't treat like CBRS, exactly like Wi-Fi. It's a little different. So a big part of it is doing proper, kind of in the Wi-Fi world, they call it like a site audit or an RF audit. So I've got access to tools that help me simulate where you're putting this equipment, what it's going to cover, and what are going to be the quality levels, aka speeds you're going to get. So that's something that I've done for, probably last year. I did probably over 100,000 sites. It was a tremendous amount of sites I had to go through and rank based on quality of where they're going to be and how they're going to work. So that's it. While I do most of my work with buy sells radios, also do it with Blink radios as well. And there's unique RF models for how those radios work that is very different. You can't just do one for one and swap them out. They behave very differently. So I think proper site planning is a big one. Having reliable backhaul, having a reliable agreement, I think put in place, having a written agreement, I think is very important. And actually having repercussions in there. What happens when things go wrong? What if speed gets impacted? What if it takes longer than expected for agreements to go into place or for revenue to come in? Things like that. So the most popular model that I do is mapping it out. Based on mapping it out, get an idea of what a site will earn. Of course, we don't know exactly what it will earn until it's up, but we try to be conservative. So that's very reliable, and that's served us very well, and kind of intentionally under promising and over delivering as much as we can in the space. And then on top of that, The most popular model is revenue share, and that cuts a lot of people out who won't agree to that. So even in a down market like this, yes, we're all making less, but at least we're all still making something, and we're not wasting a lot of time needlessly moving sites around or dealing with people who don't believe in this as much. At this point, they're more in it for the money or for quick money. They aren't in it for a slow, consistent, quality, long-term site build. So that's a pretty big difference. I don't know of other, I think all serious professional deployers do RF simulations at this point, but definitely your smaller deployers don't have access to these types of tools or equipment.
I appreciate that. It's a tremendous answer, but I think I meant to aim that at Sean and accidentally said Russ.
Yeah, no worries there. I can take obviously stab at it from my perspective, but Russ, I mean, yeah, you nailed it on the head. I mean, coming from someone that has seen this world intensely, right, at Verizon, being an engineer at Verizon, I think your perspective definitely has tremendous value here. But just a little more on that. Again, like kind of similar with Russ, I've been involved with interfacing with some of the carriers we've been talking to, some of these big MNOs, and have talked to some of their top level executives, big guys, right? And they've also talked to people that have come before in this space. No need to mention names, but the main issue there was no one actually had a network. The first pillar, right? You need a network that will function, whether that be CBRS, Wi-Fi, whatever technology it may be. You need a network that can serve people and connect to someone's phone efficiently, right? Just full stop, period. And the first problem in this space was we had radios just dispersed everywhere. Like there's no quality assurance on where these radios were deployed. Whereas XNET was like, this is wrong. We need to deploy. Like telecom networks are mostly deployed in clusters, so you can kind of concentrate bandwidth and serve a certain need. Say that area has bad connectivity to begin with. So that's the approach XNET took. We're like, here's radios that are close by. It's called contiguous coverage. So if you're moving through the zone across these blocks, you'll still be connected. It's not like, all right, I'm in this busy mall shopping center. I go from point A to point B. There's only one radio in that vicinity. So like as soon as I walk 10 steps, I'm going to fall off this coverage, or there's not going to be enough radios to fulfill how many people are in this area. So just in terms of quality assurance, I think the first step of having an actual product, in this case, a network that can serve people and serve mobile devices and provide connectivity, is the most kind of quality assurance that XNET took while taking this approach and building out our business, Joe.
So Russ mentioned the other members on the team. Could you talk a little bit about them and their skill sets that they have?
Oh yeah, I'd love to do that. Frankly, just a briefer. Like these are some of the like smartest people I've honestly met. Obviously, I'm not that old yet. A lot more experience to live, but some of the smartest people I've had the great chance to interact with and work with and be part of a team with, see how they think. But yeah, our leader, our CEO himself, is Richard Duvall, and he was actually an executive at Google X. He's been a secret research team at Apple. He's led like many PSYOP projects and technologies in their infancies, even like things like AI. He was working on like AI models, machine learning algorithms back in like 2010, like 2010, 2009. So yeah, and most notably, Rich launched a connectivity project. He was the head of it, called Project Loon at Google. You guys I won't take a deep dive into that, but a lot of interfacing with telecoms, a lot of interfacing with building networks, and what went wrong. There's some papers on it. Maybe we can link it, Chris, for the readers to have a broader understanding. But yeah, the rest of the team too, just top level people. Donald and Tom came from deep decades experience in telecom. They built Wi-Fi offloading businesses in Asian markets, decades worth of signing roaming deals, roaming partnerships. And Yeah, it's just a great group of people. I'm honestly pretty privileged to be amongst them, and I think they have what it takes. We have what it takes to kind of bridge the gap between the oligopoly of telecom and this new idea of using blockchain incentives and crypto to, distribute and share resources amongst everyone. So I think it's definitely, we have an exceptional team. Can't talk more highly of them for sure.
That's great. It's a fundamental part of a succeeding project is to have a good team and people that know what they're talking about. And it's good that there's people coming from different industries all together and sharing their knowledge, which is
Oh yeah, yeah. And just another point on that, something that our friends at Escape Velocity Ventures, EV3 Sal, always says is like one of the biggest signals as an investor to them is when they see a bunch of smart people, say like Russ and Joe, right, coming from these traditional telecom backgrounds, even like most of our team, Rich, Donald and Tom, Alex, coming from traditional backgrounds and leaving that for something like this, right? That's a really, really big signal on the market and just the conviction of the space when you have people that have produced tremendous value in our society doing other things in science and technology, and they're coming into this deep in space to kind of revolutionize how wireless connectivity is thought about in the United States and maybe one day across the world. So it's definitely a very, very bullish signal, and very, very happy to be building this with them.
yeah, absolutely. I have one or two more questions. I'm curious, does XNET have any plans to be listed on not only an exchange, like maybe even a DEX? I know that's pretty the address, but a centralized exchange and or any sort of sites like CoinMarketCap or CoinGecko?
Yeah, I actually won't spend too much time talking about like dexes or sexes. But yeah, I actually just got us listed on CoinGecko. So XNet is up and running there. It's great.
Awesome.
We're also more on the deck side, working some partnerships with IoTex. They're launching kind of a lot of deep in products. So be on the lookout there. You'll probably see more and more there.
So if XNet were to succeed with your short-term goals, what's the future roadmap look like? Is it going to be more locations? Are there going to be different incentives? What do you guys got in mind? Should roaming agreements and partnerships come to fruition within the coming future, and you have to continue to build this ecosystem?
Yeah, no, great question. I think getting that first roaming agreement with a major participant in the traditional telecom industry is definitely kind of the biggest step. And then obviously interconnecting with them and getting their customers to roam onto the XNet network proves out the model, right? So that I would say is our goal. Obviously, it's taken a bit longer than we've expected, but the fact that we're even here and it's happening right now, I think is a really, really revolutionary thing that people shouldn't fade at all, right? Because we're talking about $1 trillion telecom industry that a small startup with like, I think we have 10 full-time people right now is setting to disrupt. So I think it's very bullish. But yeah, on future plans, I mean, the plan is to have MNOs. There's 4 big ones as we know them. Get agreements signed with all of them. Get all of them to roam onto the XNet network, and in parallel with that, expand. Right, work with them, see where they have pain points. Each of these companies definitely have pain points in certain areas. They might be different areas, so work with them, fill those pain points because we can do it at a fraction of the cost. And yeah, then expand to MVNOs, right? Those are like your Mint Mobiles and Visible. I've seen a lot of ads for Visible from Verizon. They honestly have to pay MNOs to use their network. So paying someone like XNet is basically a no-brainer, right? For them. And yeah, I think once we start landing these roaming agreements and our buy burn starts happening, and just I didn't bring up this point, but every dollar we get in revenue from say Verizon, Dish, AT&T, T-Mobile, or whether it be Mint Mobile or Visible, we use 40% of that to buy and burn the XNet token off open markets. And I think this will really kind of start the flywheel that I envision maybe in the next 10 years, that XNET, just spreads like wildfire. The incentives are there, aligned. There's enough demand and liquidity in markets. And at that point, it wouldn't like people can just put up a 5G radio on their balcony, right? We can get one in every apartment. And I think that's the true vision of XNET one day in the future. It's obviously optimistic, but I like to think big. And I think that's where I see us in 10 years.
One thing that I did mean to ask earlier on in the interview is, if you're looking at the XNET Explorer, what is the significance of the gold and silver hexes as well as the blue outlined areas?
Yeah, so basically the different colors, right? Gold, silver, and blue. I'll start with gold. I actually wrote a paper on this. You can, I think it's pinned on my Twitter, or you can check out my Substack. But I called it the decentralized telecom gold rush. So basically, these gold, silver, and blue are kind of denominations of our token rewards. So basically, think gold is gold. So you're getting the highest incentive reward, and it's basically 1-to-1 aligned with the demand that's present in that area, which we've which identified through telco industry tools. Everything that the telcos use to plan networks, map out, see where there's dead spots. We use the same tools along with some proprietary data to pinpoint those locations, saying, hey, this is where there's all carriers, or some carriers have critical pain points. And this is where the XNET reward token for deploying is the highest. So it follows similarly as you asked, Joe. Gold is the highest, silver, and blue are eligible zones. There's not high demand there, which is why it's not as much incentivized, but it's great auxiliary coverage, right? So once we fill the gold hexes, silver hexes, people can come around, and hopefully when we start that buy burn 40% of revenues, people can start filling those up too. And I mean, anywhere you go, XNET was still going to be a cheaper alternative, but it's just very important to focus on a specific area at first. When we're launching with limited resources, we're trying to build a minimum viable product and get this stuff going in within like a year. So that's basically kind of the twofold purpose of those things. But yeah, it's demand aligned, it's incentive aligned. It's incentive alignment, pretty much, I guess, is like a 2-word answer.
One thing I wanted to jump in on that you touched on, and like, why would carriers do this? And this is really, you mentioned like EV3. They put out some excellent kind of research on the space and why this model makes sense. But I wanted to, highlight that really specifically, why a carrier would want to work with XNET for neutral offload if it's of a sufficient quality, is because it saves them a lot of money to put up like a Verizon site or an AT&T site or a T-Mobile site, even for what we would call a small cell. So maybe just on top of a light pole, that could easily cost several $100,000. Which sounds crazy, but when you add up how long it takes, the approvals that are needed, the cost of the contractors, it gets very expensive very quickly. Not to mention it takes a long time. Typically 6 months or more, can take years. And here, I mean, if you can being able to put up a site for a tiny fraction of that cost with good backhaul, with good radios, with a good mobile core. I mean, you can do it for a tiny fraction of that, and you can do it very, very quickly with the right incentives as well. So that's why I think carriers are very interested, especially in the current environment we're in now, where it's so expensive to borrow money and to build out infrastructure. This just seems like a very obvious thing to do. Like, why wouldn't you do this? Obviously, XNet's working on the details that matter quite a bit, because they control their networks, they control the customers and the traffic. But the pressure for them to open up and to do this, I think, has never been higher.
So I want to build off that last statement Russ made and pose a philosophical question for everyone here, something I've been contemplating lately. So let's say XNET does break down this wall and prove the deepened concept, decentralized physical infrastructure networks that are community incentivized. and they break the barrier of utility value inflow being greater than the token emission outflow of value. What's to say that proving this model gets significant attention from the venture capital and investment crowd, and they decide we don't need all this crypto stuff. We don't need tokens for this. We can do this with fiat currency. We know it works. We know it can be profitable. Let's get rid of the crypto crap, as they would call it, and do this with fiat because it opens up a larger crowd, more options to host this type of hardware, to host these networks. What are your guys' thoughts on that?
Yeah, I can take the first stab and then you guys can kind of fill in where I leave off. But yeah, I think that's a great point, Joe. They're still, I guess, dealing with these physical infrastructure networks or just kind of real world assets that are being put on chain. There's still this kind of mishap, right? Because we have small communities that know about this space. It's obviously like walking over, say if I walk over the other apartment across my street and explain this to a random person over there, they're going to be like, I don't want a crypto, like I don't want a token. Like, that's where often I've also pitched XNET a lot here in Denver to traditional kind of startup week events, traditional startups, not much experience in blockchain and crypto. And that's where the fall off point kind of happens. It's like they're following everything up until the point where you mentioned the token, and then they're like, like why can't I just give cash? But all right, so it's like the crypto, obviously there's a speculative nature to it. That's just how the markets work. But sure, you may have more upside, but I completely agree with you. There should be systems denominated. I don't think like the VC model where they just dish out like millions of dollars to build this stuff up will ever work. But I do think one day, like the token being taken out of kind of the system, right? Like people having off ramps. So say this person can set up a radio at their house and every month they're just getting a bank deposit, no wallets involved. They're just getting a bank deposit in US dollars for the token conversion that's happening. But I think to get to that, achieving like a lot of volume of real world revenues and just having stable, sufficient liquidity in the market is definitely an important step. But yeah, Russ or Chris, if you want to kind of expand on.
I think it's going to be dealt with on a case-by-case basis because I don't think XNET is going to be the only blockchain-powered telecom company in the future. I have a feeling similar to Helium, when you have a pioneer in the space, there's a lot of people that will come and try to just create competition because it's no good to have a market without competition. It makes both companies strive to be better. And I think in the case of XNET, because they are the first people in this space to go for a fully functional network, they're going to have an edge over anyone else that tries to join, especially with the team that they have and the experience that they have. It'll be interesting. They could go either way. And if they do decide to go with just cash, there's not really much that the crypto industry could do other than convince them that crypto is the future and show them the benefits. And basically what I was trying to say is if these telecom companies decide that they don't want to use crypto, I think they will gain an audience in the fact that they'll be able to use just cash for all their funding and whatnot. But the crypto industry is continuing to grow. I think it's going to hurt them in the long run. And I think if they want to be around in the long run, and they've been around for a couple decades now, if they want to still be relevant in the future, I think they're going to have to look at the hand that is dealt to them and see that, hey, crypto is really gaining some traction, and specifically this company called XNET. So let's take a look at them and let's see what we can do. And I think that's what's going to end up happening. Or you're going to see what happened to Blockbuster and many companies in the past where they pretty much don't adapt to the changing environment and their companies just cease to exist.
Yeah. And just one more point to that. I think we, Russ and Joe, we talked about it recently a few weeks ago on the XNET podcast, but this idea, right? Chris, you mentioned that these oligopolies have existed. Basically, connectivity is like whatever fundamental right, it's needed, right? So these companies are going to be needed. But if you look at Apple, right, kind of one of, if you want to have a good look on where markets are headed, you look at what Apple's doing, you look at what Google's doing, you look at what Amazon's doing to kind of get a glimpse into what the future of technologies will look like and what sort of competition, what sort of businesses will be present in that future. And Apple is kind of the biggest signal for this because obviously most people in America and across the world are an Apple customer, have an Apple phone. And they recently pivoted to only being eSIMs. So an eSIM is obviously you don't need the physical SIM card in your phone anymore. It's all kind of on the back end. And they have, I think it's up to 8 eSIMs now on their newest models, which basically leads you to showing that the future of connectivity and wireless networks is going to be agnostic. It's not going to be that you have 1 or 2 networks serving all your needs, because how the demand for data and just the projected growth is going, the current companies are not equipped to deal with it. So Apple envisions a future where there's going to be multiple networks that have hardware that are providing connectivity, and you'll just be able to scan a QR code and download an eSIM and be able to use that network anywhere you are. So I think that's definitely part of this whole puzzle too. And it's a very, very bullish signal from the market itself that we're progressing towards a different future in wireless connectivity. So bullish times, folks, bullish times for sure.
Russ, would you like to give your take on that?
Yeah. So actually, this comes out of really, so several discussions I had at Mobile World Congress. So as this, we're definitely in a tough market. This is when your belief in this market, belief in this movement really gets tested, because economically, it can be hard to make sense right now. Several people I think right now are running, having trouble kind of carrying their current costs, but are hopeful that that will change very soon and flip very quickly, which I think it will as well. These problems with being able to pay people, whether it's in fiat or crypto or a more stable crypto like USDC, I think are going to be solved very quickly. There's a lot of people who know about this problem, and there's a lot of, I think, bridges and solutions currently being developed. They're going to make it very, very easy for revenue to go out, whether you can do a pitch to somebody and not even mention the word crypto, and they get paid in cash, and just say it's a revenue share of what's earned. Keep it very, very simple. And I think that's going to be easier and easier, especially next year. There's going to be several solutions, I think, in the market coming up that are going to address that. And I'm very excited, for the space as well. I mean, there are many opportunities to where it's not just putting up XNET makes sense, but other projects in the space that aren't cellular make sense as well. They're trying to get other data. There's GPS data, there's weather data, there's noise quality data. There's all types of data they can get, and a lot of it could be done in the same location, sometimes with the same hardware, which is very, very exciting. So I think that is a problem in the industry right now, especially if you don't want to get classified for switching crypto for cash. That's something you definitely don't want to do. There are some contract solutions that are out there, but getting a solution where it goes to cash, I think that's going to become more and more commonplace and cross-chain in the very near future. So I'm very excited about it. I think it's only going to get easier and better. But this is it. This is the bear market. Your resilience is being tested, and we'll see what it's like on the other side.
Well, I'll give my take on it, answer my own question. So I'm not necessarily a crypto maxi. I'm a decentralization maxi. I'm a big advocate for this shared economy, shared infrastructure model built by the community in a manner that people are able to be compensated for their efforts or for their assets that they're willing to provide and share, right? It gives the power back to the people, puts the money back in their pocket. And whether that's done with a token or with fiat doesn't really matter to me. It's the concept. And if crypto proves this concept of the shared economy, the DPIN or community incentivized and driven projects, I think it will have done its job for the good of humanity. So I do believe it's very possible that we do see community incentivized projects, DPIN projects that will not be crypto based in the future. They could even be blockchain based without the token. this blockchain records of not necessarily transactions, but events.
Well, Sean, to wrap this up, how would one get involved in the project?
Yeah, for sure. Well, first of all, kind of as Joe said, if you're interested in just the first principles of decentralization and something that excites you, we're building something of real value to the world, and we believe that decentralizing it can provide a lot for people, for communities that don't have access to internet or that need better connectivity, and stripping away some of that power from these existing oligopolies. First of all, just join our Discord, become a part of the conversation. Even if you don't have capital or resources to participate, we'd love for you to give your 2 cents, give your feedback, just be a part of the movement, right? We're only as powerful as our community is at the end of the day, right? Where we want to be expanding. So please join our Discord. And from there, yeah, you can kind of get on ramp to the XNET community and see if there's an opportunity, if you live in the US, to deploy your own network, help with that, or just participate in community protocols, community calls, developing proposals. It's all an open community, and we believe in kind of the community's participation in it. So definitely we'll be linking the Discord, probably wherever you post this video, Chris, but come on board. We're happy to have everyone help us on this mission.
Thank you, Sean and Russ, for coming on today, and Joe, as always, for helping co-host. If anyone is interested in XNET, be sure to check out the description for more information.